I have a confession to make. I've never seen a Kurosawa film. I know, I'm awful. I plan to fix this soon, so let me know in the comments down below what film I should start with, what the best one is, and where I can find it. Otherwise, the first place I'll start looking is your mom's house. Have you never seen the films that so heavily inspired the aesthetic of Trek to Yomi? You would think that might remove some of my enjoyment from the game, and fair enough, you might be right about that. I probably would have enjoyed this indie title from Flying Wild Hog even more if I had the pre-existing knowledge of Akira Kurosawa's distinctive films. Lacking that context, I will still give you my opinion of Trek to Yomi, which is overall, it's pretty good. Trek to Yomi is an action-adventure 2.5D title. A 2D light perspective, 2D-ish if you will. The title is set in feudal Japan, and please, for the love of God, do not ask me what era or year or anything like that. I don't know. It's the one with the samurais. Yes, I am ignorant. None of that's the point. The game follows Hiroki, a talented young samurai lad, through his boyhood life and beyond. Hiroki goes through a number of tragic and fantastic experiences through the course of Trek to Yomi's 6-ish hour runtime. The game is presented in monochromatic blacks, whites, and the gray shades between. A fully black and white game may sound like something that would take away from the experience, but on the contrary, the game does masterful work with shading, the use of shadow and light and perspective to create depth and amazing visuals. Most of the game makes use of stationary shots and fixed camera angles with lush environmental detailing to the foreground and background alike, with the occasional segment of lateral camera movement to track progression through the densely detailed environment of a bustling town and the shadowy underbrush of a dense forest. I've now surpassed my quota for the use of the word dense for this script, but I'm probably going to use it several more times. I'm sorry. Visual presentation and eye-catching camera work and virtual cinematography are certainly strong points of the game, with many shots taking on all the qualities of a master cinematographer, using skillfully applied camera work to tell a story via the environments. Trek to Yomi, at least until later segments of the game, remains fairly grounded in its art direction and aesthetic, rooting its design in a recreation of Japanese towns and simple folk and all the struggles they face before eventually wandering into more fantastic visuals as the tale progresses. Let's throw a fat spoiler warning out here. I'm not going to delve into every detail of the plot, but by necessity, some context of events has to be mentioned to properly discuss the aesthetic changes the game goes through, and I think these parts of the game especially are best experienced firsthand if you have any intention of giving Trek to Yomi a playthrough of your own. Give it a playthrough, check it out, and then come back for the review.
のようなことが。
Hiroki endures his share of personal tragedy and then some throughout the course of Trek to Yomi, and unfortunately much of it comes about through his own hubris, hunger for glory, and misjudgment of the threats him and his people have unfolding around them.
己が大将か、もしくはただの手下に過ぎぬか。
我が君の名のもとに命を殺めることは誉れ高きこと。お前の次は一家親しき者ども皆殺しだ。なぜあがく、お前はもう何人も救うことはできぬ。
己をここで討ち取れば案ずることはない。
When the vicious bandit Kagero, who Hiroki tangled with as a child, returns to his homeland to exact revenge and to pillage and reef Hiroki's town, the young samurai acts in haste, pursuing the enemy out of his town and into the surrounding foothills and villages. His brash actions, partially fueled by duty and partially his own desire to prove himself as a superior samurai, leave his hometown open to further attack in his absence. The sound design on this is haunting, by the way. The unsettling ambiance in the beleaguered town with all its dying people echoing all around is much more direct and pressing than the battleground sounds you often find in most games. I found myself more than once taken aback by how intense the sounds of suffering were in my ears, taking on an urgency that I can't recall experiencing in many games. Voice acting for the Japanese voiceovers was well done and compelling despite the language barrier.
この手でその傷を負わせ、己が生き絶えたのを見届けたはずじゃ。この村は我を墓に留め置きたくないようだの。
But whenever I remember the sound design for Trek to Yomi, it will always be for the screams and wails of the dying, and that's chilling in all the right ways. As Hiroki makes his way through his burning hometown to find his lover Aiko, he finds he's too late, not only to stop Kagero, but also to save Aiko. Hiroki attacks Kagero in grief and rage, and is promptly fucking bodied like an amateur. Super sad. The game takes a turn for the weird when a very dead Hiroki wakes up and seems to be completely unaware of just how laid out to death he is. He's promptly haunted by a vision of Aiko, an ethereal glimpse of the woman slowly retreating away from town. In further defiance of how dead he is, Hiroku pursues her, following her through the surrounding forest and eventually coming to the titular Yomi, known as the Land of the Dead. Up until this point, the game has been firmly grounded in a realistic depiction of feudal-era Japan, but upon entering Yomi, the entire aesthetic and vibe of the game takes a firm shift toward the supernatural. Hiroki descends into the underworld and confronts creatures and sights out of Japanese mythology and folklore. The game never goes completely off the rails into reality-breaking impossibilities of high fantasy, but we know without question we are no longer in Kansas. Kansas, Japan, I mean. It's a place. Trust me. Google it. Both the grounded and fantastic aspects of Trek to Yomi are excellent, presented with a reverent care for style, substance, and presentation. Having a mostly fixed camera means that every shot, every screen is presented just so for maximum effect. The lighting and shadow work, the angle of arrangement of the environment, perfectly capturing the moment and maximizing the beauty and serenity of the natural world, the tension and dread of the underworld, and the sorrow and devastation of a burning town. While there are dialogue and story segments in Trek to Yomi, and they are well done and emotionally poignant in the right ways, it's the environment and visual presentation that really do the heavy lifting in both storytelling and setting the mood for the game. And without such a strong focus on aesthetics and artful visual presentation, a massive piece of Trek to Yomi's successful puzzle would be missing. It's a good thing these elements occupy so much space in the game, because honestly the gameplay is one of the weakest links. The gameplay isn't horrible. I never during my playthrough thought to myself, this is awful. I want to stop playing this. I cannot stand playing through this game. But I certainly did find myself around the midway point of the game thinking I'd already seen everything the game had to offer in terms of gameplay, and that it wasn't going to go anywhere further from there. And sadly, I was right. Combat is pretty much the total encompassing feature in gameplay of Trek to Yomi. Aside from wandering the environments, which, while gorgeous, functionally speaking, isn't much more than pressing left or right toward your objective and occasionally checking a side path or room for consumable items. Combat is simple at best and outright broken at worst. It's your usual light attack, heavy attack, parry, dodge, block formula that you see in most post-Dark Souls action-adventure games these days. And no, I will not miss an opportunity to mention Dark Souls. Leave me alone, I can stop whenever I want. In what I rationalize as a nod to the ghost of realism, it only takes a few successful katana cuts to score a kill in Trek to Yomi, especially on your enemies. Less realistic is the sheer number of bandits and otherworldly enemies you'll cut down during the course of the game, but come on, do we really want realism or do we want fun? That's what I thought. Combat is decent for the early parts of the game, but honestly by halfway through it begins to stale. Mostly because although there's a number of combos and sword strikes both immediately available and unlockable and a few ranged combat options, once you unlock one or two specific combos, every single enemy in the game will be immediately destroyed. Although not particularly challenging, except for one heinous endgame spike in difficulty, but holy shit, are we gonna talk about that later? Combat becomes a game of if there are enough enemies being thrown at you to catch you between combos and parries, or otherwise engaged with another enemy to start overwhelming you. The frequency of getting overwhelmed and taken off guard is artificially and rather poorly inflated by the game's awkward singular direction controls. For reasons I cannot fathom, Trek to Yomi has the outdated tank-like control scheme of old fixed camera games like Resident Evil, where when you face to the right, pressing the stick to the left makes you take a step backwards instead of turning you around. You cannot block or parry when you're being attacked from behind, which combined with the awkward controls that force an unnatural extra button press to turn around, just make for unnecessary mechanical difficulty when engaged against multiple enemies coming from both sides. In fairness, there does seem to be a deliberate design choice on developer Wild Flying Hog's part to punish players for allowing enemies to get to their back for an attack. In one of the earlier cutscenes, we see Hiroki learning from his master, who specifically lectures him about presenting his back to an enemy.
目を離すでない。言っときたりとも相手に背を向けてはならぬ。
This idea that a warrior should never show his enemy his back and thus give his opponent an advantage is fine by me, but we could be penalized in a myriad ways, such as increasing the damage you receive, or getting stun locked, or getting knocked off your feet, or many other vulnerabilities. Any of these options would be preferable over the outdated and clunky control style of being unable to simply turn around in a smooth and natural way. It's also absolutely possible that I'm entirely talking out of my ass on all the above speculation, and that's just the way they programmed the controls for no overarching reason at all, in which case, yeah, can we please just not?
That would be great. Okay.
My only other real complaint about the game is the sudden difficulty spike on the last boss that comes from so far out of left field it might as well be in a different county.
ただわしはお前をまた撃つだけのこと。
己のような輩が消えるまで戦い続ける。
我のように優れた者は他におらぬ。
Let's be clear about this. The boss being difficult is not a big deal. I don't mind difficult games at all. Anyone checking out my content beyond a passing glance will know that I'm fine with games making me grind my teeth a little. Hence my compulsive Dark Souls references. The game lives rent-free in my head. The boss isn't even that crazy difficult. It's certainly not the most difficult encounter I've had in a game. No, it's just simply how very jarring it is. Maybe this is just from my experience, but I went through almost the entirety of the game with just a handful of deaths, and that was spread out across the entire game. I don't think I had to repeat any encounter more than 1 or maybe 2 times. And when I got to the last boss, he absolutely steamrolled me. He hits you so hard and so fast in such long, aggressive combos, it's a huge challenge to block or parry them all. And the shift in intensity was so drastic that I really had to put some effort into just not getting clapped. Overall, I don't think the last boss is bad. It just felt entirely out of place from a game that does almost nothing to increase the difficulty or challenge in any meaningful way throughout the journey right up until the very end, where Trek to Yomi suddenly decides to brick you in the face. One last comment that I have about the story, and this may seem pretty minor, but it ends up giving you a choice of paths and endings to choose along your journey from the underworld, making it your purpose to either stay with your love Aiko, to defend and serve your people, or to seek vengeance upon Kagero for the wrongs that he has done to you and your people. While I won't say these differences are deep and expansive, there is some interesting variance in Hiroki being plagued by doubts and uncertainty with his choices, and the game even gives you chances to change your path as you progress several times before making a final decision. This made me feel like I could explore Hiroki's story more thoroughly, giving him extra depth as he grapples with where his priorities and loyalties lie, which I don't think we see nearly enough in games when dealing with complex motives and life-changing choices. It left me feeling like Hiroki, who was not exactly the most innovative character to explore, had at least some interesting complexity and relatability by letting him second-guess himself and re-examining if he had made the right choice. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Trek to Yomi. I'd even hazard to say, if you are the type of gamer who measures your game satisfaction purely by gameplay alone, and how that aspect stacks up, Trek to Yomi will likely be lacking for you. But if you enjoy things like aesthetic, unique atmosphere and tone, creative and a high-quality artistic presentation, you'll likely get a similar enjoyment from the title that I did. At 6 hours, the game is a short but sweet trek, wink, wink, through tragedy, sorrow, and the ethereal Japanese underworld, all presented in stunning shots and still scenery that would, I hope, do Kurosawa proud. Thanks for checking out my video. Leave a comment if you enjoyed Trek to Yomi and let me know if you've seen any Kurosawa films, and if so, which ones were your favorite and which ones I should check out first. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out my review of Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart and why I think this series is starting to show its age. Or you can check out my review of The Surge and The Surge 2 and see if these two games that are very rough around the edges actually happen to be a diamond underneath all the rust. Until next time, stay salty, nerds.